So I thought I'd do a little video. I've got a little bit of acoustic here in this little fake Han temple they've constructed. So I think this is probably going to be the last vlog in China, or maybe second to last one. I think a good way of knowing if you enjoy a place or not is whether or not you think about leaving it. And I think about a week ago I was like, yeah, I'm ready to leave China, so I'm not going to rate it super highly. There's lots of really interesting things here, lots of good things, but obviously the fundamental purpose of travelling, I'd hope for most people, is experiencing, a culture, something that's active and breathing and experiencing life, really. And China is just devoid of, it is soulless, really. Like, it's a scary place in that respect. So I'll explain a little bit more. So I'm in Xinjiang now, which is a place that's, at least on paper, Islamic, though I must say I've hardly seen any mosques, and the mosques that I've seen, for the most part, maybe 70% of them, have been turned into kind of like theatrical parks, kind of like the ancient wonder of Disneyland, if you can call it that. So I wouldn't really say, at least in the cities, that it's there's a kind of practicing of Islam. Absolutely not. This leads on to the next bit. So we have here all of the, I guess, a central area. It's not even the central area, but a central area of Kucha, where I am. It's not dissimilar to any other city in Xinjiang, actually, or probably China for the most part, I could say, where everything is high-rise, everything is demolished to make way for big wide boulevards, big open parkways, the kind of classic Soviet-era stuff you'd expect in any kind of socialist or communist country. Obviously China's not communist, likewise Vietnam, I did a video on that recently. The most capitalist places, they just use as a sort of adhesive the age-old image of kind of communal values to bind people together for a more lucrative economy. Eventually it all comes crumbling down. And like with Vietnam, although in different respects, but in Vietnam you see the Vietnamese flag everywhere, and it's obviously a communist flag, and you have Maserati garages, and there's nothing communist about Vietnam at all. But the flag scenario in Hanoi, for instance, is insane. We're talking about every 10 feet you've got a flag of some kind, every boat, every car number plate. The Vietnamese flags everywhere with the hammer and sickle insignias in and around the public spaces. And again, it's all to give people the illusion that, you're paying into an idea that has at least value on paper, when in actual fact it's just a complete racket. Now, China's very different, and I've mentioned this in some videos before. So I came across the Vietnamese border to Hikau, up to Kunming, to Xi'an, and I didn't see any Chinese flags at all. I made a video of one floral kind of collage, which was a flag at the base of a skyscraper in Kunming, but I honestly didn't see any. I've taken the overland route all the way to Xinjiang, where I am now, and it's only in the Xinjiang province, and specifically when I get to Kucha, that I've seen flags everywhere. And obviously it's because there's no social cohesion here. It is essentially a hijacked culture. Now, I have said in another video, this idea of always siding with so-called minorities and pretending that the kind of larger majority force in any environment, on a domestic setting, on an international setting, is somehow kind of the oppressor. It's ridiculous. Democratic values, I'm not saying China's democratic, in fact democracy doesn't exist as such, so that's another tangent, but at least the kind of democracy on a moral level, fairness, has to be ascribed to practicality, and you can't cater for everyone's needs because just nothing would work. You know, if you allow people to decide the kinds of architecture they want based on their cultural values in such and such a town, you know, it's not practical. You can never do that. Everything has to be streamlined to an extent. Obviously, China's taken it to the next level. It's literally just you either conform or you get completely abused. And I walked extensively the day before yesterday around this town. Another thing I just want to make note of here, all of these buildings are empty. This is also to do with the Chinese housing bubble, which will eventually explode. It's a giant racket. It's the most profitable scheme in China, I believe. It's the Chinese housing, I don't know what the word is for it, but the sector is just the epitome of scam. It's you know, obviously it has political purposes as well. You keep building, you give people the illusion that there's this constant progression and development, you know, share prices, stock prices, investment prices in all kinds of sectors in and around the housing sector, which is usually the prime sector. You know, real estate in many countries is a measurement of I guess, affluence or just kind of economic footing. It gives people this idea that it's, you know, it's a good place to be. Keeps you working, keeps you, you know, I've got to keep up with the Joneses. You know, everything's moving. I don't want to be left behind. Now, weirdly, there's loads of things China does. They take it to the next level. Now, I've seen thousands of bicycles here in Kucha, where they're more noticeable, let's say, because it is ludicrous how expansive this place is, and there just aren't the people to even fill a percentile of the tenement blocks here. I saw the same thing in Halong Bay, a giant Chinese development project there in Vietnam, and it is just they're shells for the most part. They're just complete shells. You know, you have the windows on the outside, you paint it all. It's always someone fumbling around, sweeping, making it look like stuff's happening. In reality, no. Most of them are empty. I've seen bicycles, right? And actually, I won't tangent yet. I've seen bicycles, flat tyres, all of them. I've seen bicycles put on their kickstands all down many of these new boulevards, and all the tyres are completely flat, where they've been sat there probably for well over a year, maybe even years, to give again the illusion that there's always people living in the surrounds. There's always people about living in these empty blocks, you know, and you think, are people that naive, are people that stupid that they can't see it? I think a lot of people see it. I also think a lot of Chinese people are completely devoid, I think, of any... I think they're brain dead, really. You know, I've always expressed openly my opinions on certain countries and certain cultures, and India for me is my least favourite place. That's on an average, right? That's a mean. But there are certain things, you know, obviously Indians have personality. It's a distinctive culture. Chinese people, especially the men, there's nothing going on. I'm talking just dead inside. And, you know, that's to be expected, isn't it? If you live in these kinds of places where it's all about revoking any individualism, any individual stance on a matter, any kind of political autonomy. Obviously, a political autonomy is representative of one's cultural value set, and culture is personality, really. It breaks it, you know, that's what it's broken down to. The base value of such is being different to your neighbour. That creates a culture. When you're unified in a kin group, you keep expanding on that, it becomes a hamlet, a village, a town, a city, a country eventually. And it's all representative of one strain of culture, a shared value set. China breaks all that down. And at the base of that, it breaks down people's personality, so they're completely submissive. So honestly, I just don't think people see it. And they're complete workaholics as well, because they have to be. They're forced to be. Now, I've seen people really are efficient here. You know, again, that's another distinction between Indian culture and other cultures in the world. You know, the stereotype of China being an efficient country is completely true. People work really hard. And that's because there's nothing else to do for many people. It's really, you know, the working class people are complete slaves. It is a complete slave state, really. Now, I'll lead on to the next bit. I'm always curious because I always think people are spying on me here, and it's probably not untrue. So many people work for the police, they follow you around in Xinjiang. You know, every time I see a passerby, I'm really suspicious. And, you know, I'll lead on to that. I'm no doubt going to go on tangents and forget my initial point, because there's just so much to say, and condensing it into these videos is obviously not easy, and I want to make it interesting for people. So when I arrived in Turpan, going back to the flag scenario, that's the first place I stopped in Xinjiang. I expected to see all these ancient cities and monuments that are depicted as being kind of the originators of the Silk Road industry. You know, these big ancient civilizations. China's destroyed all of them. They're all completely destroyed. Everything's rebuilt. It's all a gimmick now. It's all like a theme park. Everything has to be monetized to the extreme. Interestingly, the prices are really expensive. Now, China's a very cheap country. The food is cheap. The standard of accommodation is high and costs next to nothing. It's extremely safe. A stereotype that I've crossed out, and again, I haven't been everywhere in China, but this isn't my first time in China, and I've been in a lot of different areas of the country. People are actually quite polite. Now, is that a derivative of kind of a fear? You know, if you don't behave yourself, you're going to get gulags. Actually, I don't think so. I think people are actually generally polite. There's etiquette there. And again, that's based on the organisation, the efficiency structure in the country. You know, it's almost too much effort to be rude, because that commands personality, doesn't it? Rudeness is a derivative of having a uniqueness to your personality, right? And expressing that. So, you know, if you want to streamline society, you expect that streamlined society to have a normative disposition and not react to certain things, because reaction again is expression is personality, personality is culture. You're getting rid of culture. So I've really noticed people are just generally very quiet and polite, and yes, you could say that's submissive, but I've seen people with personality giggling and stuff. I'm not saying everyone's a robotic drone, but a lot of people are. So that's one thing I would cross off the stereotype. Security is absolutely unbelievable. As I've already said, you know, there's bicycles on kickstands. I haven't seen a single lock. There's not even anywhere to lock it to. People put their bikes, whether that's a moped, an electric vehicle, all on the side of the road. Nothing's going to happen. I feel super safe. But at the same time, there's just Big Brother watching you all the time, and it's horrible. Really, it's really, really horrible. Every second there's a camera. There's probably a camera in here right now. For sure, there's cameras all around watching. You can't go anywhere without seeing a camera. And when it comes to people listening, it's really, really Orwellian. So when I arrived in Turpan, before I even got to Turpan, the police come and question you on the trains as a foreigner and ask what you're going to be doing in Turpan. You've already been issued a tourist visa for which you have to provide an itinerary. So it's not that this is going to gain anything. It's not that they don't know where you're going. It's all just that the structure of the system is to maintain control visually. It's for other people on the train to see as well. You know, this idea that, yeah, see, the foreigners being watched, we know everything about everyone. When I got to Turpan, I just realised I was on a tangent. With respect to the historical sites, they were genuinely terrible. For the most part, I did see a lovely mosque in this city day before yesterday, and I say lovely because my standards have already been lowered so much that was like a breath of fresh air to see something that had authenticity within it. But obviously on a scale comparable, you know, where we were to compare it with European sites and monuments, and again monuments from other places in the world, it would just be so low. But for me, I was like, wow, because I've been used to just everything being a replica, and the museums are the worst museums I've ever seen in the world. They're not even museums. Everything is fake in them. It's all crap. And especially in Xinjiang. Now, Xinjiang, obviously, they want to completely curb any individualism, anything that aligns to kind of, let's say, Uyghur culture or Dungan culture, or any of the cultural groups that are quite distinctly different to kind of the rest of China here in this province. And so they've just pumped so much money in, which is a strategy. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do at all. You want people to be immersed in a singular culture. I'm not against that. I hate the idea of every group believing that because they have a different hair colour or a different religion or a different taste of food, they need a new flag. It's ridiculous, you know. The whole thing in Catalan or the Basque region, or even Brittany back in the 80s and in France, you know, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, that's replicated everywhere in the world. It's ridiculous. I don't agree with it, you know. You have to force cohesion because, frankly, people are not going to do what you want them to do unless you implement a forceful kind of mechanism for that. And so what they've done is they've just given money to everyone. They're building things, they're giving you important things as well, you know. A nice little community park, I think it's nice. I like the fact that they prioritise public spaces. One thing I really like in China, is the emphasis on this. Trees, grass, plants, flora. People are constantly working on this. I like that. I think that's great. You know, there's plenty of systems that you could argue are totalitarian and aligned to the same kind of value set as, I guess, what China has in mind, but they don't place any priority for kind of, you know, the fauna, the surrounds, the social. There's playgrounds everywhere, there's outdoor gyms. You know, you expect it in Soviet countries as well, but it's on another level here because there's just obviously so much money, there's so much capital, so much investment. I've noticed though that everything is, of course, it's fast-tracked, and again, I'm not against that. I think efficiency is a great thing. You can't be working out the exact shade to paint a particular pillar in a particular corner of a particular park in one part of a town, in a province, or in a country, you know, and you know, it has to be cost effective as well, I guess. So here's an example. You know, this is probably very new, and obviously it's already chipping away. I know this is a really micro example, but I am stood here now, so I don't have many. But I've seen so many of the buildings that you see in the backdrop there, that are probably less than, you know, 12 months old. Paint's already completely peeling off because everything is so cheap. Everything is done so quickly and efficiently. And that's, again, I say efficiently, I mean long term maybe not. But again, we have to question what the purpose is. The purpose is, a lot of people are making a lot of money from this, the housing bubble. So there is that financial scheme on the side, building to give kind of opportunity. I say opportunity, so to give the illusion that there is an investment opportunity for the mass market of investors in China. You know, there's so many documentaries on China's housing bubble, real estate bubble, really worth watching. It's a complete scam. But also, again, you want to give people things. You want to revoke any sentiment that might be opposed to the state. So you want to give them everything as quickly as possible. And, you know, as big as China is, you know, this is happening everywhere. So they don't have a massive labour force, you know, that's able to construct these things to a certain standard. You know, that's just the reality of the world. Even if you've got 1.2 billion people, this is happening everywhere in China. So, you know, it's just got to be done with whatever manpower you've got. And you see, you know, there's a lot of times things just aren't done effectively, you know, to the standard, let's say, that you have in Germany or Scandinavia, the UK, France, etc. So going back to Xinjiang, when I got to Turfania, like I said, I walked around all the sites and stuff, and it was monotonous, and that's really when I decided, yeah, I'm not really happy anymore, I'm going to continue on my journey. Obviously I only get 30 days on this visa anyway, but it's just the kind of drudgery of seeing the same copy and paste cities, towns, boulevards, parks, everywhere you go. I think this video is starting to lag now. My phone's terrible. I'll try and wrap this up. Maybe I'll do a part 2. So I already had people questioning me on the trains. Then I came here to Kucha, which is south-ish of Urumqi, on the way to Kashgar, between Urumqi and Kashgar, really almost middle ground. And then I walked around looking for some sites that I picked up on the maps, and I ended up finding that mosque I mentioned earlier, and there's videos on my channel about it. It's just a really, really nice mosque, breath of fresh air. And then all of a sudden, I'm getting curb crawled constantly. I'm getting followed. Sorry, even before that happened, the day I checked in the living room, which was really dusty and dirty, because again, a lot of things were purpose-built. I guess pre-COVID as well, because I think, you know, the idea of opening China up perhaps would have been intended at an earlier time. So a lot of the accommodation options I go to, I see this everywhere in the world, it's not exclusive to China. All the pictures are like 2019 when everything was brand new. Then it obviously all got abandoned for many, many years, especially in China, more than other countries. And so everything was really kind of dusty, not grubby, just abandoned, dusty. So I'm in this living room, and then all of a sudden police come in. They come into the hotel to check that you're staying there, and then they do this thing like which is really patronising and stupid. They're like, "Oh, we just came to take a picture with you," and it's like, and none of them have been unfriendly. Some of them have been idiots, and I'll continue on with this in a second. But none of them have been unfriendly or aggressive. But it's all, you know, they put your arm around you, let's take a picture. Obviously, the picture is just, it's all for surveillance, you know, and they think you're buying into this idea that it's like chummy, that you want to be friends. It's ridiculous. But then it got really annoying. You know, like I said, the next day I was getting curb crawled constantly, every police officer, and it is a police state here in Xinjiang. Every single corner there are fucking trucks filled with them. Everywhere, as an army, and this is in the main place as well. This isn't even off the track to places where they would, let's say, deter tourists from visiting. So then I'm in the park. It was actually this park, but it was an even nicer area. It was really tucked up there somewhere. This beautiful bench. I've been walking for like 7 hours, being curb crawled pretty much the entire time. Then I got to this place, which was the nicest place I've seen in the city so far, and I just wanted to sit down, eat some sandwiches I bought, chill out, and all of a sudden this fat piece of shit cop comes along, and it's one of those idiots, one of the dunces, the fat ones that get the park jobs because they're so useless. But obviously you never fire cops. Cops don't get fired universally, so they just find like the most pointless position to appoint them at. And he's just like taking pictures in my face, he's following me around, I'm just minding my own business on a bench, and he's just driving around the park following me, thinking that he's somehow like an agent in some James Bond movie. You could tell that's what was in his mind, like really the dunce of the police force, the fucking lowest guy. So I was just like, fuck this, and I started walking back to my hotel, and then he starts following me on the bike, and they do these things, they think you don't know, they got the camera on the front of their bike, and he's trying to like tap his phone whilst driving, and then all of a sudden I'm about to turn around and scream at this guy, I've had enough. And then a load of other dumb cops show up on a bike, and they just come up to me, and they're about to translate something, and I just basically say to them, I obviously didn't understand, but I pointed the fat one, and I took my camera, I was like, yeah, pictures, now I've had enough of it. And just as I was about to translate something, I just walked away. They have no remit for the most part. A lot of the time it's like individual cops thinking they're going to get a promotion, or they're being big, or they're just bored, they've got nothing else to do. Sometimes they might even be friendly, they just want to know what you're up to, where you're from. None of them have been aggressive, but it's just the constant struggle of having to get up in the morning knowing that the moment you go out, you're being watched by a camera, you're going to get curb crawled by a cop. This is obviously something that is specific to certain regions. This is Xinjiang. If you don't know about that, you can Google it. It's just the way. But it makes for a really uncomfortable time. I would say China is a huge disappointment, because it is, as well as it is with respect to infrastructure, as high as the standards are, as secure as it is, and it is very safe, as polite as people are, as clean as it is for the most part very, very clean, aside from the mannerisms of the common man. They are shocking, by the way. People literally putting their cigarettes out because they chain smoke. The men here chain smoke like I've never seen before. Chinese men smoke more than any other nationality in the world, hands down. And they're like, I've never seen it. I've been to poor places. I've been to places where, you know, there's really abject poverty in your face. You know, places in Bangladesh, places in Pakistan, places in Central Africa. But the Chinese worker is a grunt, an absolute beyond the word common. I just, you know, be chain smoking cigarettes, and they're like put them out on the carpet or on the table or on the marble floor in like a foyer of a nice place. This is constant. Just really just, again, they throw their food. There's obviously always someone there to clean it up, but they throw their stuff on the floor and just like, it's really, they grunt and just like, blow snot out of their nose in front of people. Like really just absolute animalistic behaviour. Because the most men here, when I say most men, the men are really particularly bad. I honestly think there's a difference. Every single culture, sometimes the women are, let's say, lesser, sometimes the men are lesser. Every culture in the world has that. The UK is a prime example. Women in the UK are the biggest binge drinkers in the world. They're the most obese in Europe, and I think they're second for smoking to Greece, something like that. So again, it changes everywhere in the world, but the men here are really just drones, just fucking, I don't even know the word for it. So yeah, without going on a tangent, so 25 minutes in, I'll round it up a little bit. So yeah, a week ago I was like, I just don't want to be here anymore. It's you can just tell it's really just everything's fake, everything's like a lonely place. Unbelievably, when you think of Chinese efficiency here in Xinjiang, and I think I also skipped the flags, so I was saying you can see the flags in the backdrop there. They put the flags here to try and artificially inseminate this idea of nationalism when you don't see any of that anywhere in the larger cities in central or eastern China. But I don't think it works. I walked around the city, as I said the day before, and I went to some really rural areas where these tenement constructs are still undergoing, and they're relocating people from all of their traditional homesteads and their communities, which are all mud brick, ancient settlements all throughout the city, and they're just being, in grid fashion, fucking bulldozed, destroyed, demolished. Now, the argument has validity. There's no sewage network, there's no water lines, there's just electricity. All these kind of essential utilities are just, it's just not feasible for them to introduce them into these kind of ancient areas. You have to always question the motive, and this is one of the biggest things in society as a whole, globally, that people can't seem to comprehend because they're indoctrinated from birth into this idea of economic gain, constant progression. Progressing to what? What are you progressing towards? The idea is obviously ingrained into society because it's about allowing for profitability to be almost indefinite for the status quo. If they actually were to teach people the reality, which is that, if everyone's happy and they're all living their lives and not causing any problems, why do we need to push them into this directive of constant advancement, demolishing their houses, building a better one, upgrading that, making it higher, making it wider, making it of a more sustainable material? For what end? For what end? It's all about economic gain and, again, social control. The economy wouldn't function, or shouldn't be functioning as it is, because really the healthiest way of existence is just to have an efficient, sustainable plot for each family that they can live off and be content with. Really easy. But of course that doesn't make corporations a lot of money, because they have to keep building things, building. So yeah, so that's what, you walk around the city and you see everyone's homes being destroyed to create this uniformity. And I would say that the difference in standards, in, I guess, the levels of, probably another couple pretending to, we're all mic'd up. I know it sounds paranoid, but in the ruins in Turpan, myself and a tourist from Denmark, we went to these ruins, and there's all these guys in leather jackets in the baking sun by themselves, pretending to look around, and every time you gaze at them, they sharply turn their head and pretend to take a picture of something. And then eventually we went off the track and we were picked up by a car, and then as we were leaving the compound, the police had arrived to they didn't interrogate us, but they were just make sure that next time you don't go to where you went. They already knew, everyone's communicating, and there's undercovers everywhere, there's mics everywhere. It's really that serious in this province. And specifically, obviously, if you're a tourist, you're not from here, and there's really not that many tourists, so they do have it is feasible for them to watch each and every one of us. So there, I'll start wrapping up now. So essentially, the gist is I'll be leaving, going back to somewhere more rugged and pure, Kyrgyzstan. Looking forward to it, one of my favourite countries in the world. There's lots of things I really like about China. I would come back. Food, it's obviously great food. Cleanliness and safety is a breath of fresh air when you're not in Xinjiang and when you're in other provinces where they're not watching the tourists. But that said, there's always that thing in the back of your head, which is noticeable for anyone from any other place, especially for those of us that have travelled, that there's just no personality. It's devoid of character, and there is a controlling element that's extremely uncomfortable. So I'll leave it at that. It's a 30-minute vid, one of my biggest in a while. All the best.